All right, so welcome to Galvanized, building the internet that we want. I have with me a few people here, awesome people. We have Natalia or Nat Nats from Celestia, in charge of creating a lot of the great spaces that people are enjoying pre-airdrop and post-airdrop. The spaces that people are enjoying. The space around Celestia is one that's like trying to get a bunch of people galvanized around modularity and like stop building monolithic, L1s that are going to trap all of the users, and all of the fees and all of the consensus has to happen on one chain. And so obviously the idea of modularity and the idea of the internet that we want, great things. We have Stellar here, and yes, I'm just going to do the intro so we move this along. We have Stellar here coming to us from Black Sky Society. Many of you will know Stellar's work from going to Autonomous Ecologies events, spaces that are really designed to challenge, like, what does a post-web society look like? What is this, like, internet culture, like, that we've built inside of Web3? Like, what good is it if it's not actually building towards a more liberated, less attention distracted world of the internet? And then finally, we have my partner in crime, my former work wife, Yazinator, Yaz Khoury, who is also building Celestia, but also an executive member of Ocelot, a DAO in the Celo ecosystem that is focused on really just funding different initiatives towards equitable solutions, I think, is the easiest way. I'm also on Ocelot, so I think the easiest way we would just put it is like, yeah, we hope to fund and create space for equitable software solutions. Okay. My name is Jarrell James. I'm moderating, but I'm also going to be like emceeing this whole stage for the next couple of hours. And I am the founder of a project called Internet Alliance, which is focused on disaster-resilient internet infrastructure, which we'll get into a little bit later. Let's start this off. The title of this panel is Building the Internet That We Want. That's a very open, vague statement, but it sounds good on a schedule and on paper. So let me just start off with asking each of you from your own perspectives. Let's assume that 20 years from now, the internet still exists. What does that internet look like, and what do you want it to look like? We can start with Yaz, if you'd like, or we can start with Stellar. I want to just move it down this way.
Yeah, I think in 20 years, you'd ideally have an internet that you can run yourself in a way. I don't know if that's the right term for it, but like, kind of like how, if you think about it from a mesh network point of view, like being able to participate in the internet but not have to go through third-party provider to get access to the internet. So if there's like tech that allows you to like, use the internet locally and stuff and connect on that, I think I would like to see that. I don't know what that would look like.
You're talking about like a peer-to-peer community network internet infrastructure.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say we probably all might say something similar to that as far as what does the ideal base layer foundation of the internet in 20 years look like? More distributed, more sovereignty, data sovereignty, privacy. Less reliance on, needing to hop through large servers, but, there is still efficiency and scalability. And then 20 years, it's like 2043. So I guess it also has to, I don't know, there's like all this super intelligent AI kind of stuff. I don't know what that... how that's factored into the internet infrastructure, but it has to be a lot more secure than it is today.
I want to follow this up because I think it's a good question to specifically ask you, and Nat, feel free to jump on this as well. Like, I know you really care a lot about how people actually interact themselves, like emotionally, psychologically, with the internet. And we're talking about super intelligences, AI. We're talking about people being able to like text AI and pretend like it's their boyfriend or like their friend, their like, significant other of some sort. And there's models being built around this. So how do you, and like, let's turn this question into, how do you see people interacting with the internet in 20 years, and or what would you like to see?
I definitely see artificial intelligences being more accepted as, you know, just similar sort of agents as humans, like existing within the internet. Like there's going to be sovereignty for AIs. So I think that's going to just be very weird. I don't know if it's just like, is that what I want versus what I don't want? It doesn't really matter because it's going to happen. So like, it's just like, it seems like maybe we have to just accept it might be part of evolution of building systems like this, or just advancing towards singularity. So yeah, I think that might happen in the next 20 years. And
Go for it, Nat.
Sorry, I don't have my voice too much, but I hope we're gonna stay connected, because I feel that this place is full of individuals, and I think it's also now the internet that we have so much allowance to see and to choose from. There's sub-communities that are being built, and I hope that these sub-communities can, communicate with each other well. I hope it's gonna be less ads, actually, in 20 years.
That would be beautiful.
And it's really, I think, hard to imagine in 20 years because the world is growing so fast.
And I think everyone here is just afraid to say that they don't know if we're going to be around in 20 years. Like, is the internet... snaps. I'm trying to be hopeful. I'm trying to be, look towards a progressive future. I think you all have said just a number of things I agree with, and I want to discuss and bring it all together. Yaz spoke about peer-to-peer, and we all definitely agree with that. Now, something I would love to discuss around crypto and AI. We're talking about these worlds coming together. We're talking about 20 years from now. Do you think that we see a mesh of crypto and AI? Is this something that you guys actually think would be liberating for the internet that we want? Or do we think that decentralized currencies and decentralized intelligences, is this all good? Or do you see yourselves wanting us to just focus on this peer-to-peer, make sure there's libraries for all these different communities? Do we need to continue to push this frontier? We can start with Yaz from the side of somebody who's actively trying to create ecosystems around a future internet.
So I have a lot of thoughts about that. On the peer-to-peer side, one of the most interesting things right now in crypto is the peer-to-peer layer really sucks, right? There's not enough research papers on improving the peer-to-peer layer itself, like how do nodes which represent anything peer with each other in a way that's much more decentralized and stuff. So I'd like to see more innovation there, because that would help everything, especially with the internet long term. On the mix of AI and crypto, there's a bunch of projects, there's ZKML, which I don't think is very useful, because it just prove using zero knowledge that this data has been trained, but the data could be trained on false information, but you just have a proof that it's been trained on false information. So that's odd. But there are...
You're talking about essentially smart contract gated model creation. So the ability to create an AI model about a certain topic, certain theme, certain content, but the people who are creating that model all have gated access through smart contract verification.
Yeah, and they can come up with any kind of information just because you can create any kind of information to train your AI, right? What I do want to see is something that I've been toying around with called sovereign AI, which is combining what a sovereign rollup is, because from the Celestia perspective, everything can become a rollup over time, right? And what a rollup could represent, it doesn't have to be heavy loaded OP stack or Arbitrum based rollup. It can be any kind of application submitting information to Celestia or any other DA layer, right? And there you can have an AI, like you can go really sci-fi into it. Like a sovereign AI could be an AI that, submits its decision making and training data to Celestia for anything. And long term, if it gains even remotely better intelligence, it can, using DeFi, can take out a loan to buy it back its freedom from so that we can truly sovereign, whether it's a vending machine or a self-driving car. Yeah, you can go really crazy with that.
Wait, this is getting very meta. For those trying to keep up, Yaz is arguing that a vending machine with an AI would eventually be able to earn enough money that it could buy itself, or at least a controlling share of itself.
Yeah, I mean, like, imagine you can take out a loan on Aave to pay back and, start owning part, fully buy yourself back from your owner as a vending machine. Now, if the vending machine is having a bad day, it might not give you what you want when you put in a coin or stuff. So it might be dark future on the vending machine.
Just want to, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that this is the time where we're not going to last 20 years.
Yeah. We have vending machines owning themselves. I think it's not looking good.
Yeah, maybe I'll flip the conversation.
Flip the script. Flip the script.
Yeah, so I guess things I'd like to see in the next 20 years, if we can, redo the internet, is it actually helps us, become more connected to improve society and the world and our living conditions. And I think a lot of people, are here in cryptocurrency. They've created DAOs, all these different structures, and, we've sort of seen, how hard it really is sometimes to make them work, or to make our big dreams come true for, we can have this great impact on society. But I mean, it's a starting point, and maybe combining that with, maybe we try to do this on top of stuff that's just not ready or it's broken. And
You're talking about a concept that a lot of policy circles love to throw around, and Internet Alliance brings me into other circles, like more UN type circles sometimes, and they love to throw this term around, which I would love for us to just get into and talk about it from a hacker side. But they love to say meaningful connectivity. And they will say by 2030, we hope to have the 2/3 of or 2 billion people that are unconnected. We hope to have them meaningfully connected. And yet no one in the policy circles has ever been able to define for me what meaningful connectivity is. And I say, okay, cool. What is meaningful connectivity? And they're like, email. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's going to be super helpful. So in 20 years, we building the internet we want. What do you guys see? What does meaningful connectivity really mean from you? I think we all have people here from all over the world. Yeah, you guys actually introduced the country which you are your background, but Syria, myself, Ethiopia, Tigray, woot woot. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm from Czech Republic.
Nice. Good.
I'm born in America, but Iranian. My parents are both from Iran.
Yeah, so all of us come from regions that, maybe not the Czech Republic. I don't know what your guys' connectivity rates are like, but
we don't connect with each other. That's why I'm here.
Well, so from the regions that we're from, meaningful connectivity for my people is the ability to do banking, the ability to actually get video and photos and text messages out to the rest of the world, because we've experienced a lot of weaponized internet shutdowns. And so I think when I am in those UN circles and they say, we want to have the whole world meaningfully connected, I'm like, well, my people, by your standards right now, are meaningfully connected, but they're also able to be taken away from the internet with a snap of a finger and the flip of a button. So is that really meaningful, their connection? I'd love to hear from your guys' perspective. What does meaningful connectivity mean to you?
I think also coming back to the AI and crypto, I feel like the more we're using AI or crypto, the more I want to be in community, and I want to be connected. So I've been thinking a lot about this topic and how to actually bring people together. And I think you need to start in small groups, and the smaller you start, whether it's with women in crypto or just with people in general, the strategy needs to be that you need to, maybe stay with them and do some kind of an activity that you have a same values and you're working on the same goal, whether it's a project or maybe you're in a team or you just go for, everyone is a burnout now, so you just go for a retreat and then you guys start planting trees together. And I feel like this connects people, and maybe we should bring these things together. That is just like a, the things that we did when we were young.
You're saying meaningfully connected people build meaningfully connecting technology.
Yes.
Nice. Okay. Hell yeah.
And
hell
you
yeah.
also want the people to be good, like
Yeah.
generally good. So you want to get to know them, and the way you get to know them is you need to spend time with these people.
Yeah. It's an underappreciated love language, time spent, just want to say. Stellar, almost dead named you.
Yeah, no, what you're saying about disconnecting resonates a lot, because there's actually, I don't want to mention the event that much, but what inspired it was this idea of going offline together with a small group, or maybe 100 people for 2 months or 6. I was starting to say 6 months. I was like,
No,
it's
yeah.
like, JJ, like, what if like everyone just went offline for 6 months and you're like in the same location and you're just like rebuilding technology so it works like when you're not connected to the internet. So that
For
now-
context,
Yeah.
Stellar called me like, I think it was 2 a.m. my time or something like this, like 2 months ago, and was like, I just really want to just get like 200 of like my friends and my friends of friends, and we go someplace for 6 months in like Greece, and nobody's connected to the internet, and we just build internet infrastructure. And I was like, I love it, but I just don't know that the tech world has 6 months to offer you. It is 6 months. So I was over here like, scale it down, 2 months, 6 weeks, whatever you have to do. But yeah, go ahead. I love this idea of getting people who build infrastructure to just get disconnected.
Yeah, so building infrastructure is like one part of it, but it's also about, getting people there that are also, maybe creating art or music and like adding other dimensions to this story as well, because I mean the technology is just the technology, but it's like also the other people around it that will make the world realize that, oh, this is something for me, or this makes sense because look, there are all these other people. They're not just like these like tech builder types saying this is like the future of the internet or future of the world. So that's the idea around this this offline residency, which has now, been condensed to 2 months. And like yesterday, I was talking to someone about it. They were like, "This sounds great. I would do it, but what if there was just like one room and it had a computer and you just had to connect to it with an Ethernet, and maybe you could only use it just like like 1 hour a week or something, or you can like." I was like, maybe that might be the first experience.
I love that everyone's interaction with this is like trying to argue with you to try and make it so they can be a little bit more connected. But yes, I mean, like, Stellar's talking about creating spaces that are, multidimensional, robust, have, people who have drink something besides Mountain Dew recently, and and Cheetos. And so, like, as somebody who's, from the Ocelot perspective, you're funding these types of gatherings, but someone from, like, the Celestia perspective, the two of you, I'd love to hear, like, how are you guys, I think your game night is a good example, but there's definitely concerted effort being put out there by very burnt out people in the space to try and create these more inclusive spaces that, attract, I think they said there's like 1,200 Turkish people that are registered or something for DevConnect around here, but like, are they 1,200 Turkish developers? Or are they, 1,200 Turkish artists? All of these different backgrounds. So, what are your guys' takes on this?
I'll let Nat talk about the game night aspect of that.
Okay, so for everyone who didn't attend game night yesterday, this is kind of like our thing in Celestia. We're trying to make an event a little bit more entertaining, because I used to went to many networking events and I felt like there's something missing, and I wanted to add this like a playful thing to it where if you don't know how to connect with people, maybe you can just use games, you know, whether it's a Web3 or whether it's a board game. So we had a game night last night. It was pretty successful. The people that were playing board games, they stayed there until maybe they're still there. I left them there actually. But I think with the Turkish community, so actually maybe let's go back to the game night. So we normally, what we do is I put this like gaming aspect, then we show Web3 games or something, the demos, so for people to learn. Then we have like a networking area, and then there's a, let's say, dancing area for the people that just want to, like, you know, show yourself some dance off.
Yeah.
But with the with the Turkish community, normally what we like to do is that we like to get to know our community through modular meetups, and through them we meet people, local people, and we get a partnership. So we include them. So yesterday we had a Node 101, and they were helping us to with looking for the venue, with being there for us, and through them we connect with the Turkish community. So through, normally what I would like to do is, you know, you need to meet the locals, and then once you meet the locals, they will introduce you to their own community, and then let's hope that they will like you, and then you stay with them.
Yeah, I mean, just to, I think, wrap us up on our last question. In taking all of this together, we're talking about, like, you know, how do we build the internet that we want 20 years from now? How do we bring these communities together? How do we get local people to understand that, you know, crypto is something they could be involved in, AI, all of these different, you know, life-altering technologies. So in one sentence, I think the final question for us is, like, what are you doing to build the internet that you want for, you know, 20 years from now, anything like that? And it can really be anything. I could start us off, or Yaz can start us off, and we'll work back this way.
Yeah, maybe I haven't been thinking about it from, like, the internet that I want to see in 20 years, but one of the things that you were saying about meaningful connectivity, right? And I love it when, like, the global community talks about meaningful connectivity for the whole world. But, you know, there's always this little minority that's not really part of the whole world, right? So one more popular example, given that we're in Turkey, there was, I think like a few months ago, the Turkish-Syrian earthquake and stuff. No, actually, that was in January or February. And one of the things... February, right. And one of the things that was pretty interesting and challenging was Nat's friend was working on an application for people who lost homes as part of the earthquakes, so they can be matchmaked with somebody who's offering them shelter. Now, this worked really well in Turkey, but in Syria, because they were, like, banned by the power that be, right? There was no KYC process that exists that allowed you, if you're a Syrian citizen, to go through that KYC process so you can find shelter and stuff. Because, like, legally, like, the system that you would integrate to that. And, you know, I guess that's a meaningful connection. You don't have any connection. I mean, it's pretty good for OPSEC, not gonna lie. But I want to see, maybe hoping to build for that for everyone, right? Ways where you can, like, safely create an identity that is decentralized in a way, but, like, especially for people that are impacted by disasters or, like, crises or war zones, you know?
Yeah, so I'd say Box Sky Society is approaching this more at the, it's like, what people often ask, like, what is Box Sky Society? What do I do? And it's like a few days ago, I was like, okay, maybe we're, like, metaphysical architects or something. So we've proposed something called the post-web, and we're not developing a protocol right now. We're not, there's so many people already developing protocols, have so much money to develop them. So I'm just like, I'm not going to go out there and try to, you know, find some developers to work with me, raise money for another protocol. Instead, what we're going to do is define principles for how protocols and applications should ideally be developed. So we're calling that the post-web. And there are actually a lot of projects that exist today that fit within the definition of the post-web, but it's a small percentage of the Web3 ecosystem. But we're trying to, create some sort of, bring all these people together, give it a word called the post-web, and then see if though that small percentage of people can be more successful, for example, of creating the internet that I think will be better. And, some of the principles of the post-web are, privacy and security, privacy being paramount. It's been mostly, ignored or very behind, perhaps because of, ZK technology or what have you. It's all just like primitive, but, it's important, and we should move away from this transparent nature of blockchains. Another is like, local first, offline friendly technologies, applications, efficiency, scalability, resilience. It's like we all know we need that if anyone is going to use it outside of our small circle of friends. Sovereign identities and organizational cybernetics and rights portability, where organizations have identities within the post-web. So, for example, if you're creating an application somewhere, it kind of can get ported to other applications. So this will just, these components, in addition to like pluralism, interoperability, and like community governance, which is not like, there's no protocol maximalism. There's no like one technology that you're trying to just build one ecosystem around. So with these 6, pieces
pillars, tranches,
principles, maybe we can get the better internet. And so that's what Black Sky Society is doing, kind of metaphysically architecting things.
Trying to shift the zeitgeist. Go ahead, Nat.
So I think if you ask me, I'm trying to bring the people like you, Stellar and Yas, together through these events and to create these beautiful things together. So my role is a little bit at the back.
Is it though? Or is it at the front?
I don't know. You tell me.
I think creating the communities is far more important than people give it credit to.
But I like to look at you, and like I like to look at everyone who's trying to build something that is going to change the world and, make it a little bit better.
Yep.
Or maybe more better. But yeah, I think, connecting communities and even ecosystem, because I think like with our modular approach, we are doing pretty well with connecting
It's
Cosmos,
easy to be friendly.
Ethereum, easier to be friendly with everyone. Yeah.
All right. Well, I would go into mine, but you'll hear about that, honestly, plenty of times throughout this day. So, this has been Galvanized, building the internet that we want. And this is Yaz, Stellar, and Nat. So thank you guys for your time and for your thoughts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I think this next one is going to be awesome because there's very few times that you get to have like a look at the history of the space that's actually in depth and has a little bit of tea. So I invited this person to this space, the real world stage. And the reason I invited this person is because I've been around a long time and I know the drama of the space and I know the processes around stuff like EIPs. And there's quite a bit that's built in this space that's built because of debates and conversations that happen around EIPs. And all of the people you just saw on the stage, we all have worked towards the different social impact projects. I see the impact market folks are here. That's a very big social impact project. All of us have worked towards building this stuff. And I think every one of us can attest to the fact that it's really hard to get funding. People talk about banking the unbanked, they talk about this stuff, but they don't actually, especially when the bear market comes, it's a really hard thing to get funding for. So I would like to introduce Lane Reddig, who is going to talk to us about a little process he tried to do where he was trying to create an EIP that would fund public goods from the base Ethereum protocol. So get the hugs in. Come on up, Lane. Whew. Yeah. No worries.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, this is awesome. I'm super honored to be up here with you and having this important conversation. And by the way, thank you for I was kind of expecting a conversation, and then it was like, oh, it's a talk, but like let's do it as a conversation. It'll be more fun that way.
Yeah, well, I think it's a little bit easier to understand like how the drama of this space is itself actually drama, and I think that developers like to think that they're really like emotion, stoic folks who don't show a lot of emotion. And I think something as simple as trying to fund public goods showed that this was not the case. And so I'd love for you to give us a blow-by-blow real quick. Just give us like a 5-step overview of what we're exactly talking about. Name the EIP, name the daemon,
Sure.
and give it to us straight.
Sure. Okay. So I'll do that, and then
The year is
2019. The EIP is 1890, so you can easily Google this. If you search for EIP 1890, you'll find it. And the actors are, other than myself, also Greg Marco and Kevin Iwaki. I believe Greg is here today, maybe later today.
over there.
Oh, why aren't you up here, dude?
Get up here, Greg.
Seriously,
Greg, get up here. Get up
You're
here.
part of the story.
Get up here, Greg.
But would a little bit of background context be helpful, maybe? Yeah. Okay. So so I'm Lane. I'm older than I look. I have to say that all the time, and I say this because I had like a 10-year-ish career like before getting into crypto and blockchain and Ethereum stuff. People are sometimes surprised to learn this.
Oh my God, you had a real job.
I did actually have a real job before doing magic internet money. Most of that time was spent working in traditional finance. And then I became an entrepreneur, and I had a startup in healthcare space. So again, like nothing whatsoever to do with Ethereum or with crypto. I discovered, so I had been in this heads down founder mode for years, and I kind of missed the early days of Ethereum. But when the blinders came off, this was 2016, and like someone sat me down and explained to me a smart contract, Ethereum, et cetera. Like this was my come to Jesus moment, so to speak. And like all the pieces began to fall into place, and I was instantly captivated. And so I showed up at DevCon 3 in 2017 in Cancun as a volunteer, like knowing nothing. I literally did not know a single person there. I like couldn't have written 2 lines of Solidity to save my life, and like was just wandering around like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, like talking to people, and then was really, really honored to be hired by the Ethereum Foundation shortly after that. So I joined the foundation
And this is where you start to get a look at like the dirty EIP process and like
how the sausage is made.
Yeah.
So I joined EF in 2017, late 2017. As a software developer, as a core developer. Also, I was doing some researchy stuff in the beginning, working on the early days of the merge, what is now called the merge. What was interesting is that I found myself pulled more towards the social side of Ethereum for a couple of reasons. I mean, one is personal interest, but I kind of felt by necessity, and the reason was because like the tech was really well served. I mean, it always has been. Ethereum is full of like really brilliant, technically minded people. But what I found was that like the social side, the governance side specifically, like no one like that G word. No one was using that word in 2017. Literally nobody. Yeah. I hosted an event in 2018, early 2018, with Aragon and with a few other folks who were thinking about governance at that time. It was called EIP 0, which is like a reference to obviously the Ethereum improvement proposal process, and just trying to get the important actors in a room together, figure out how do we govern this thing that has arisen. I'm getting PTSD just thinking about it. Like it was this crazy time and this uphill battle, and it's just fascinating now with the benefit of 5-6 years of hindsight looking back. Governance is a thing everyone talks about now in the context of layer 2s and layer 1s.
You were a little too early.
Bridges and everything. But like, yeah, anyway, I'm circling back to your question, right? So like this was just a thing that no one was thinking about at that point in time. And I was like, crap, like someone needs to worry about that. I, had some experience having run a startup, and I went to business school studying corporate governance.
The thing that people need to focus on is like creating some kind of resiliency around the social impact of Ethereum. Yeah. And resiliency meaning funding, resources, any kind of energy and effort, technical-minded, genius people focusing on this as well.
So all of those things, but also like even more basic stuff. So just to give you an example, at this EIP 0 event, I think this is useful context, even because we'll talk more about the public good side of things. Like we got a bunch of amazing stakeholders in the room, including some of the Ethereum co-founders and like just like Ethereum Foundation people and all these other folks, and we literally spent like 4 hours whiteboarding and trying to define like like just do basic stakeholder mapping. Like who are the stakeholders in Ethereum? What are their interests? How do they overlap? Like really basic stuff. And at the end of this whole process, like we didn't come up with a whole lot. Like we were trying to come up with, for example, like a statement of shared values or like a constitution, so to speak. And like even those people in the room together, you know, we were very like values aligned and everything. We really struggled. And I think that this is both the beautiful side of Ethereum, that it's like this beautiful soup. It's this like chaotic big tent thing where, you know, like what is Ethereum? Like even defining Ethereum is hard. Especially these
Hashtag
days,
beautiful soup. I'm going to need to.
I don't know where that metaphor came from, but it really is.
It's a beautiful soup.
Yeah, it is. What I mean by that is everyone brings something,
Yeah.
you know, to contribute to the stone soup, so to speak, that is Ethereum, right? I totally lost my train of thought.
Yeah. But you were saying that like the beauty of it is the chaos, but at this point there was no shared values system that allowed the chaos to be as impactful as it
But here's
could
the
be.
crazy thing. I actually think we have a lot of shared values. Like, do you feel shared values with the people
Oh, I
in this
think
room?
we do
I do
entirely.
for sure.
I don't know why everyone's afraid to put them on paper, but
That's
like
the thing,
it's the
but-
UN up in here. Like everyone
Yeah.
says it, no one puts it on paper.
But my point is trying to put it on paper. Like we tried,
Yeah.
really legitimately tried to do this, and it was
Yeah.
really hard. The best we came up with, and you're going to laugh when I say this, was Ethereum should keep producing blocks. Everyone agrees about that, right? That like everyone's interests are aligned there.
Any negatives?
But if you go any further than that, you're like, oh, you know, I guess we'll talk about the money thing in a minute. But what's a good example? Like Ethereum should, you know, even saying something like Ethereum, the base layer, and keep in mind at the time, this is 2019, there were no layer twos. Like Ethereum was a bit simpler than it is now. Saying, oh, Ethereum should fund public goods. Like that was a very controversial statement, and that actually is a good segue into 1890 and how that whole thing happened. Other basic stuff like we want multipolar governance. That was also a controversial thing, you know.
Well, you look around and you say to people, like, what is your entire marketing scheme for their protocol for everything, right? And like in 2019 especially, a lot of it was banking the unbanked. A lot of it was like, a lot of it was talking about these social goods, and these people are using these terms around social good to shill their DeFi protocols, to shill their new like whatever the hell bullshit they were trying to create.
By the way, that still happens today, unfortunately.
Yeah. So this is a great segue. Yeah. So you came in and you said, hey, what if instead of just saying we wanted to bank the unbanked, instead of just going with whoever's yelling the loudest in the social impact room, what if we had this public goods infrastructure in place to just fund people who are looking to build experiments in social impact, and then they can go on from there? And I'd love, so let's get into this dirty gritty.
Awesome. Yeah, no, great segue. So let's see. So we talk a lot about public goods, and as you said, everyone uses it as their marketing collateral, so to speak. But I think what's fascinating about this case and about the case of this EIP and what led up to it and what came after it is that like it's a very concrete example of a public good, and that public good is core infrastructure, right? Like I don't think anyone in the Ethereum ecosystem would debate the fact that like Ethereum needs researchers and developers. We need R&D, like to keep the chain going, to keep improving the chain, to build things on top of the chain. Like that is clearly a public good. It is non-rivalrous. It's non-excludable. So even in the like strict economic sense of the term, it's in my mind one of the purest examples of a public good, right? So we're talking about a very concrete case study here. Okay, so now let me go back to your question about the 5 points. I don't know exactly how many points it is, but I'll try to kind of like quickly lay this out. And to be honest, it's been a few years, so like my memory is like a little foggy here. So Greg, feel free to jump in if I get any of the details wrong. But okay, so I was working for the Ethereum Foundation as a core developer, and I did not join Ethereum to make money or to get wealthy. I joined out of curiosity. I know, right? Like I was very curious. I was really passionate about the technology, about the people, and about the values, right? So as I said, I came from a traditional finance background, and I left a very lucrative, very comfortable role in traditional finance after 6 years because my station in life at that moment was making rich people richer. And I was like, this is not what I want to spend the rest of my life doing. I want to bank the unbanked, or, I want to contribute to the public good, the common good, let's say. And I was very honored to, as I said, be hired by the Ethereum Foundation, have the opportunity to travel around the world and participate in events and lectures and all this kind of stuff. But to be quite frank, my pay was like garbage. It was like really, 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 really atrociously bad. And I didn't care. I was like, look, I'll give it a year. I was coming out of founder mode. I was used to kind of like roughing it, let's say. I didn't feel that I needed like whatever, like a big paycheck or anything. And the other benefits, right? The ability to travel and meet people and everything was like more than sufficient. And I said I'd give it a year, see how it goes, like renegotiate, figure things out at that point in time. And at the end of that year, actually, to be honest, it went to about 18 months. I'm 40 now, so I was like, I'm obviously showing my age here. I was like mid 30s, let's say. I was like 33 or something. I was living at home because I couldn't afford to like pay rent in New York, which is where I'm from, which was kind of okay because I was like on the road a lot. And my friends were making 6, 7, 8 times, 10 times what I was making. And at some point it just became untenable. And I was like, look, I want to keep doing this. I want to keep contributing to Ethereum in a big way, but I can't do that for $25 an hour or whatever EF was paying at that point in time. And I tried having this conversation at many levels within the foundation. And I was basically told you should move to Thailand or Berlin. I was told it's your fault. You live in a high cost of living area. Like, sorry, that's on you. Like we don't pay. Whatever. There's a whole lot to unpack there. And my response was like, I would love to live in one of those places, but like my family is here. Like I can't just uproot my entire family.
Well,
I have an elderly father I'm taking care of.
That's your
that
bad.
was not an option for me. That was
you
my
shouldn't
fault,
have
obviously.
family.
And so one of the issues here, we talk a lot about whether technology can be neutral and is Ethereum like a thing for all people in the world. And I was like, the reality at this moment is like the people that are building Ethereum, the people that can participate in this ecosystem are young, unattached, wealthy, English-speaking, Westerners primarily. And this gets into this whole concept of diversity and inclusion. I don't want to go there necessarily, but like that's not great, right? Like Ethereum is kind of socially designed around the image of the founders, right? And like that doesn't necessarily translate. And so I had this kind of like moment of crisis where I was like, I want to keep working on this thing. I love it. I'm passionate about it, but I can't, it's not sustainable in the current format. And so that's when I began chatting with Kevin and Greg and a few other people. And I mean, Kevin should be well known to people in this room as the founder of Gitcoin and, had done an enormous amount of work at that point in time already on public goods and actually had authored a previous EIP, maybe multiple on a similar topic. And as well, we included some of the other core developers. And we came up with this idea that I thought was really interesting and really creative. It was called...
that was your first mistake.
Yeah. No, my first mistake was living in a high cost of living area. And expecting to be paid like a reasonable wage. So EIP 1890 came together, and it was, I believe it was called a credible commitment to sustainable
development or something.
Funding, basically. And we were very inspired by Zcash. Okay, so the Zcash ecosystem has a mechanism where a portion of the block reward flows into it's called an ecosystem fund. And that fund, I think it's managed by the Zcash Foundation. I hope I don't have that wrong.
Yeah.
Of course, there's also the Electric Coin Company, so they have like this multipolar governance there. And we looked at this. We said, why don't we try doing something like this for Ethereum, where we take a portion of the block reward from each block, and it could be a very small portion, and put it into some sort of an ecosystem fund.
We're talking like a fractional portion. We're talking like
actually, the actual fraction was 0. So this is where things get interesting, right? So if you actually read the EIP, it's called a credible commitment. And what this means is that we wrote the code to capture a portion of the fees, but we set the parameter to 0.
Okay.
And I thought that's why this was a clever idea, because I figured, look, this was intended to be controversial.
Yeah.
It was an item of action, and it was like the developers, kind of raising their hands and saying, guys, like if we don't find a better way to do this, and there were alternative ideas, and there was Gitcoin and a few other kind of nascent ideas. If you give us no choice, like we are the core developers, like we understand the protocol, and like we think this should be done. But the point was never, I just want to be very clear about one thing. The point was never actually to increase it beyond 0.
The point was just to start the conversation.
The point was to start the conversation and just, again, like just raise a flag and be like, guys, we're an important contributors to the ecosystem.
Which
here.
brings us to like the theme of this entire stage, which is like starting the conversation about real world applicability inside of crypto, inside of AI, inside of really all of this cutting edge hacker space stuff. We are talking about a lot of things that nobody actually is going to use. And so how do you start the conversation around real shit? And this is the way it was happening in the technical space, specifically from the core development community.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you can't fund your core development, your core infrastructure sustainably, you're not going to get all the other stuff. I think that's the starting point. That's the foundation upon which everything else is built. And so I think we should, I know we don't have a ton of time, we should fast forward a little bit. So I want to actually say that like the situation is a lot better today, as far as I can tell. I mean, it's a shame. I ultimately...
There's like retroactive public fund. There's like the retroactive funding. There's grants. There's a DAO system that exists in an ecosystem of DAOs.
I think it's not amazing. I think it could be better.
Yeah.
I did leave Ethereum core development, and there were multiple reasons, but this was one of them. And I think it's really sad because I'm not the only one. I saw, other... So let's set myself aside. But I saw many talented researchers and developers basically just mic drop and be like, sorry guys, like we can't do this anymore. And I think that's a shame. I think as great as Ethereum is, I think it would be greater if this problem had been solved at that point in time. And I have been working on another project since 2019 called Space Mesh. And we're, so again, forwarding to the present, like we're also facing now some of these same questions in the current project. So I want to recognize these things are complicated, but this thing called Protocol Guild exists now in Ethereum. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's really interesting. It actually is, in many ways, very close to what we were describing in EIP 1890. It is smart contract based. It's not baked into the core protocol. So that's the key difference. And that was the thing that was the most controversial about EIP 1890. It's like a voluntary mechanism. But a bunch of projects, a bunch of L2s in particular, a bunch of the zero knowledge rollups and like Arbitrum and some other projects actually funnel a portion of their like revenues into this protocol guild. And there's like 150 plus or minus members of this guild. And it's sort of like a token curated registry, kind of like each person.
RIP.
Yeah, we're showing our crypto boomer status here by digging up all these things from 2019. But yeah, anyway. So the point is like the core developers, right?
Yeah.
So EF people, non-EF people. Greg, probably some of the people on your team, right, are included in Protocol Guild. They register, and then there's some process by which you apply, and you get added to the registry, and then each unit of whatever of ETH that flows into this thing gets split into 150 pieces and divided among those developers.
People.
And 16 to 17, I checked this morning, it was about $16.5 million has flowed through this. So that's like on the same order of magnitude that we were thinking about with 1890. So it's really cool to see this coming together. And in retrospect now, again, with the benefit of like 5 years of hindsight, it may just be the case that we weren't, the ecosystem was not mature enough in 2019, and it has come a long way since then. So I just want to say like things are better today.
Yeah, I think that was going to be my final takeaway, is that if things of like, I think socially I'm a little bit more mature these days. I think DeFi hasn't delivered exactly this like promised land that everyone thought it would, and I think people are burnt out on a lot of those narratives. And the more I talk with individuals in this space that I know, like yourself, have been around a long time and have been trying to do impactful things, there's like people who are burnt out and they were working on DeFi protocols for a really long time, and people like you and myself, we're burnt out in a different way. Like we're
existentially burnt out a little bit.
Yeah, I think we're spiritually burnt out, which is
that's
very different than I think a lot of the people who are properly like technical protocol burnt out. Like, oh, I've been building this.
I think I've got a little bit of both.
Yeah, right. And I think that the spiritual burnout is coming from the community of people that like, yes, we had to wait. We've had to wait for everyone to become more mature, essentially. And I think that's where a lot of the frustration happens. I don't think we give enough credit to people who've had to like wait for the whole space to mature, like socially, not just a protocol side.
I think that's a great subtitle or alternative title for this conversation. It's literally like the slow social maturing of Ethereum or Web3 more generally.
Honestly, this is your book.
This is a great case study. Yeah, someone should write a book about that. I think it's fascinating. Look, I mean, we were a bunch of, I don't know, like inexperienced children at that point in time.
Kids.
And I mean, I was in my early to mid 30s, and like I had no idea what I was doing back in 2019. I mean, I still have no idea what I'm doing, but like, at least as far as governance and funding and public good and all that kind of stuff goes, like I'll give you another funny, really short anecdote. Antonopoulos and Gavin Wood, they obviously wrote, so Antonopoulos is famous for having written Mastering Bitcoin, right? So he teamed up with Gavin Wood to write Mastering Ethereum around the same time in 2019. And I tried to contribute a chapter on governance. I don't think it landed in the final book. And it turned out to be the hardest thing I ever did. Like writing, it's not a field that existed at that point in time. This notion of like governance, of decentralized protocols. It was really like novel work, and I've never written a textbook before. So like I spent like a month on this, like full time, really, really hard. trying to pull together material and cite references, and I found myself like deep in the study of like philosophy of government and political philosophy and all this kind of stuff. But it just gives you a sense of like how nascent it was at that point in time, and we've really come a long way. Like even compound governance, which is the primitive that many things have been built on top of, including Gitcoin, like that didn't even exist at this time.
Well, I think and I know we have to wrap up, but what you're trying to, I think, elucidate is that at that time, when it comes to writing, there was one God, and his name was Vitalik. And like, if there was anything being written about this stuff, and it wasn't coming through the mouthpiece of God, it wasn't really going to, because then everyone just wrote derivative pieces upon what Vitalik had said.
Well, I think Vlad deserves a shout out here.
Okay.
Vlad Zamfir did a ton of work around that time on governance. So I actually ended up citing him probably more than Vitalik in this chapter that I wrote.
Oh, shouts out Vlad. But yeah, there's these really siloed gatekeepers essentially of the writing of Ethereum, which is, I think, unique to the space. When computers were coming into like their fruition in the 70s, there was tons of people writing about it. There was Marshall McLuhan, there was Seymour Papert, there was Nicholas Negroponte. There was a ton of people writing from a ton of different perspectives on what the future of like just internet infra and ISP infra would be, and they all had different ideas. Like they all had conflicting ideas, and a lot of debate was had.
We're now, I think, in that phase of Web3 today, where there are so many competing ideas, and the way they manifest is as different protocols and different layer 2s, and you have the Solana way of thinking and the Polkadot way of thinking and the Ethereum way of thinking, and in some ways their values align, in some ways they clash tremendously, and like I think that's like we're in this, what's the phrase we always use, the Cambrian explosion era.
Yeah.
Which is exciting.
And on that Cambrian end, I think this has just been a really great conversation. And if anybody has like a quick question or two, we'd like take it, sure. But yeah, Lane, thank you for your service in waiting for the space to mature. I think you're a hero for that. And yeah, I really appreciate that. At least early on and still to this day, like, you're fighting for funding towards social impact and trying to get people their fucking flowers. So that's good.
Oh yeah, brother. Thank you for putting this together. Really
no worries,
honored
no
to be a
worries.
part of it. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so yeah, I'll take that. No worries. Jess, is Will here? He is? All right. We're going from talking about an attempt at funding public goods and social impact from Lane and the history of this to a team that is actively creating a social impact project and has, I think to this day, still running the largest universal basic income program on the planet. And there's a lot of people that have, tried this, most notably the UN, and failed. And yo, there he is. What up, Will? All right, come on up, you two. Can we get one more micro? There we go. And so, all right. I wanted to have these folks up here. They're coming from Impact Market, and I wanted them to come up and do a conversation with me, because I don't know if you guys have noticed, but this part of the series, the real world part of the cloud stage, is really just a series of conversations and interviews with people who deserve flowers in this space. And so one of the reasons I invited you two, and I think I've talked about this with at least Jess, is that I am annoyed that everyone gives a fuck about WorldCoin out of nowhere. And I think like WorldCoin making an argument for UBI is not the reason why everybody's obsessed with WorldCoin. I think there's a lot to be said about a shiny ball that looks like Apple made it. And
they did make it, right? Like, yeah, like the guy that designed the ball was from Apple.
Exactly. And it is something that I would like to discuss, because you, as a team, Impact Market has been doing UBI for years now, and I think it's 50,000 people around the planet are receiving a UBI from the Impact Market protocol, and this is all over the world: Brazil, West Africa, East Africa. This is the questions that we should be talking about. Is if everyone just seems to care about UBI, is it because of the actual universal basic income aspect of it, or is it because there's just shiny things from teams in Berlin? So with that, I'd love to give you a chance to give your backgrounds real quick, and then we'll just jump into it. So Will, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Thanks, Jarrell, and thanks for inviting us to have this conversation. So my name is Will. I'm the CEO of Impact Market, which is a universal basic income protocol, but we also deliver other value-add financial services to last-mile communities all around the world. Before Impact Market, I was the first business hire at Cello, and before that, I was the country director of Kenya Give Directly. And there, I launched the largest UBI project in the world, $30 million distributed to 25,000 households. It's a 12-year program. And so UBI is my jam. I could talk about this forever. So thank you for having us here. I'm really excited.
Nice. Yeah, Jess.
Okay, so hi everybody. I'm Jessica, so leading operation at Impact Markets. So mostly focusing on all the community that are currently receiving financial services. So before Impact Markets, I come from like a very different area. So I was in the not-for-profit sector, so working for NGO like Human Rights Watch, and especially in the Asia Pacific region. So yeah.
So let's just put a quick question out there. Do you guys think you're going to come out with a shiny orb anytime soon?
I would say fuck no.
Okay. Okay.
Thank
yeah.
Jessica. No way. Yeah.
Yeah. So with just to on this discussion, I think it's important to discuss like there's an approach being taken with UBI by other teams, other orgs that seems to be tying universal basic income into digital identity. And this is where I think there's assumptions being made that these two things have to be tandem. And I'd love to hear how you guys actually create universal basic income and allow people to still have their anonymity or at least control over their identity.
Do you want to start, or? Yeah, I'll take maybe the first part of that question. So in terms of the orb, look, I do think that UBI is a big problem, and I'm happy to see lots of people tackling it in different ways. And so, yeah, limited shade to WorldCoin. However,
limited shade.
Limited shade. However, I do think there are pros and cons to each approach, right? So biometric identification is the most secure way to kind of prove your personhood. Mm-hmm. However, these orbs cost like $40,000. They're expensive to administer, and there's a lot of risks we're taking when you're giving like biometric information to a device that you don't know like how that information is being used, right? And so,
also, I come from a part of the world where people will take your body parts and use it if they need to.
It's insane. So I used to work at Give Directly, right? And so we had a research study where we were taking, some researchers were taking saliva samples to measure cortisol levels to see the impact of cash transfers on your stress. And that alone was so controversial.
Whoa.
Because people were like, what are you doing with my saliva? There's not this level of information or understanding. And so I think when you're getting to the point where you're taking like biometric information, you have to like, there's a higher degree of integrity that you have to operate with. And so I hope that the teams that are thinking through this are thinking through all the implications and not, giving people $40 to take their iris scans and kind of like perpetuating this kind of imbalance of power.
You're speaking to the community galvanization by the WC team towards where they give an orb to somebody in a global south country and then say like, okay, we'll give out $40 to every person you like scan their eyeballs of, which is a really solid way to get a bunch of people from the global south into your protocol. It's literally what the missionaries did. It's been proven by religion. This is how you when missionaries go into the global south, they show up with money and food, and they're like, you should listen to me and my God. And this is, I think you're speaking to a point, it's a bad onboarding strategy because it's not actually like real. It's just about getting transactions. So you can go ahead and just take the second part of this, which is like, how do you see your onboarding in Impact Market? Like, how do you guys actually onboard people, and who's doing the onboarding?
Yes, like this question. So yeah, and to WorldCoin, for me, there is a lot of ethical concern because lack of information, especially for this type of population. But so how we're doing it, we're working on a community-based approach. So we are working with community leaders that know their people, that live in a close proximity. And so we identify really in the most basic way, going through the community leader that identify the family that need immediate assistance. And so then we provide them with a wallet, and they are identified through their wallet address. So very simple and phone numbers. So yeah, we have no, we inform people on how we are storing their information, on what information we are taking, and how we are going to use them. Mm-hmm. So I think that's where the difference is with other protocol in this space.
Yeah, I think consent is important. So I think one thing that people don't recognize is that there's a lot of different applications to a UBI. You're literally kickstarting an economy. And so one of the things I'm seeing from, let's just call them new UBI projects, is really just this focus on like, yeah, we're going to get digital identities, we're going to get a bunch of biometric information, we're going to give people money for it. And then really what it's preparing for is like mass migrations from the global south. Because if you look at their onboarding numbers between the south and the north, it's nowhere near, it's like orders of magnitude different. And so one thing that I'm curious about for you guys is that I know you've done research pilots around giving users or recipients of UBI something to do with their money. And I'm not seeing that from other UBI projects. So I'd love to hear about what you are building in the future to give these people something to do with the money that we're giving them.
I love that question. Thank you for asking. So I think what some projects fail to understand is UBI is just the beginning, right? In some ways, you can view it as like an acquisition cost or a way to onboard users. But the amounts that some projects are giving are so low that that's not going to break anyone out of the cycle of poverty. Like some projects are giving like 2 cents a week, right? Mm-hmm. Which is not going to make much of a difference. And so
2 cents a week.
2 cents a week.
And you guys are like anywhere between 50 to 70 cents?
70 cents a day.
70 cents a day.
Well, the thing about UBI is the B in UBI is basic, right? So it should meet your basic needs. And the poverty line around the world is 70 cents.
Yeah.
And so take that how you will. But I guess what was my point?
Your point was that no one's giving them something to do.
Oh, yeah. So there's two things here. There's a lot of research that shows that the modality that you're giving cash transfers matters, right? So when you give a income, like a stream of income, people tend to spend it more on like resiliency, so like food security, like healthcare spends, other things like that. If you give people like a lump sum, they're more likely to invest in things like businesses, right? And so that both are important, right? But they are different use cases. And if you want people to kind of climb the ladder out of poverty, you need to give them the options of both. And so that's what we're doing with microcredit. We've built this kind of large community of folks through UBI and through Learn to Earn. And now we're offering microcredit loans to these communities to allow them to take advantage of the income that they've been receiving to kind of and empower them to lift themselves out of poverty through these loans.
Yeah, I can speak to one of your guys' early research pilots, which is also why I love inviting Will to things, is because he shows up with receipts. He's like, this interesting data we have about people spitting into a cup. And I'm like, oh yeah, let's bring that on in. But yeah, I think one of your earliest projects, you were trying to give people something to do with their UBI. And this is what originally caught my attention about like the potential for UBI. Was in Brazil, you guys were trialing the ability to pay people for recycling and like letting people have micro economies around recycling that were just all happening inside of your app. And this was 3 years ago, and it broke your system. And there was so much recycling going on that they realized, they were like, we can't actually support this project right now. But from what I'm hearing with this microcredit, and maybe you could speak to this, Jess, is it sounds like your ecosystem has matured quite a bit, as we all have. But it sounds like you're in that position where you're going to start trying these projects again, and that sounds like a very high value project.
Yeah, I kind of like to think of impact market not as a UBI protocol really, but more as like a financial hub for unserved or underserved population.
A gateway drug.
Sorry?
A gateway drug.
Yeah, so because we're starting with UBI because, yes, we face people in situation of poverty, so you want to take them out of this situation. But then we also have a learn to earn, where we educate them on what they can actually do with their money, or like what type of businesses they can set, or anything. And then we move them on to microcredit, so they can start their own businesses as well, and then give back to this community. So really like an ecosystem of like, I receive and then I give back. But in terms of micro work, that's something that we are exploring, because I think this is a tool that could be very useful for this community and for the environment as well. The things that we did in Brazil was very successful. We saw a lot of demand. We saw very positive impact, both at the individual and community level. But it requires, to build an application that we have not figured out.
That verifies basically it needs to verify the various kinds of plastic that were being recycled, and also like basically people be creating these Tonda Loan Club type ecosystems for, I'm selling you my plastic, you're selling our plastic to that guy's selling our plastic to the government.
Yeah.
We have to create like a loan situation around all of this. But I believe it was like something like 21 tons of plastic in 2 weeks.
Yes.
It was
yes.
crazy.
It was very successful.
It was, yeah. And so I would love to see more like architecture around this, because I mean, the carbon refi industry inside of the crypto space is like gets a lot of attention, and I see very few solutions. It's just mostly discussion. So how do you guys see, I know that you're involved in, raising right now, and everyone give them money. But yeah, if you had a pitch for where you're headed and like why people should be paying attention, like impact market is something that's actually proven, and it isn't this moonshot little fun gamey idea. So like, yeah, what is your pitch? Where do you see UBI headed in the next 10 years?
Yeah. So first off, I think that the next Grameen Bank is going to be on the blockchain for sure. And
Grameen being Grameen Foundation.
Yeah, exactly. Essentially, right now, delivering financial services to the last mile is very, very hard, right? Especially when you think about loans. Loans are small, and the frictions are high. People don't have a proper identification, and so all this means that there's this huge funding gap for last mile users. I think it's $4 trillion right now, and then microcredit's been around for 50 years, and it's still not meeting that need, right? It's like 230 billion in terms of like TAM, and of that subset, like the private on-chain credit is less than 0.5%. So we're at this precipice right now because we have all the technology in the world to make this happen. People have smartphones. We have the ability to put all this stuff on-chain and create this level of transparency that never existed before. And then we have this ability too to align incentives with the communities on the ground, so they're rewarded to repay their loans, to vouch for their good neighbors, do all these great things. And so I believe that if you make the intermediaries as invisible as possible, you can unlock a lot more capital to these places.
Make the intermediaries as visible?
Invisible.
Invisible,
sorry.
No worries.
So that's what we're about. We basically want to create this protocol where we become as invisible as possible, push all the decisioning and enforcement and servicing of the loans to the communities, push all the data insights to the lenders, and basically create this flywheel that allows capital to flow to these communities and come back and create a lot of impact. Yeah. Would you add anything, Jessica?
That was perfect.
Okay, well then I'll have to ask you to add something here. Once again, the other UBI projects have raised somewhere around the ballpark of $100 million. And I'd love to ask you, with your 50,000 recipients of a daily UBI of about 70 cents, how many people could you be giving UBI to if you'd been given $100 million?
Yeah, so right now we're supporting 50,000 people. We have disbursed 3 million so far.
Dispersed 3 million.
3 million, so yeah.
Orders of magnitude.
Exactly, so just like 100 times this.
Yeah, so let's assume you guys were given, $100 million, and now you are able to reach 300 million people a day. True or false? That's more users than the entire crypto ecosystem. Correct. So this is something. Yeah, it's more than most countries. It's literally the population density of the United States. And this is something where you guys have a proven system, you have a proven approach, you have community-led approach, you have a transparent, consent-informed process, and you've done all of this with $3 million. And now we see some shiny orbs and $100 million, and I would love to know, like, where that $100 million is really going to go. Is it going towards the UBI? Is it? Because I don't understand. What was the $100 million for? Is it not going towards? It's going towards OpenAI. They're scanning retinas and making models.
Yeah, I don't totally understand it, to be totally honest.
What's the $100 million for?
Yeah, I mean,
somebody tell us.
I don't know, man. Like, I guess it's. I mean, the orbs are very expensive to manufacture. Maybe there's something.
$40,000 an orb
per orb. Yeah.
But it's also like if you do product inflation on, you know, parts and labor in order to make your product cost $40,000, that allows you to make the argument that you should raise $100 million. Has anyone actually built an orb from scratch and seen if it actually costs $40,000 to build one of these orbs? Because if we look at their supply chain, I highly doubt that any single orb actually would cost that much. But I do bet that for, you know, an accountant's purpose around valuation, it would be a good number for somebody.
Yeah, yeah. And the company that manufactures the orb is also a for-profit company, right? And so there's like distortions of incentives. Which is
Distortion of Incentives is a great title for your book.
Ooh, I like that album cover.
Yeah. No, we have a couple extra minutes because Abby's just arriving on scene. I just want to double tap on this. Like, when you guys are talking about fundraising and you're fundraising for something around UBI, this UBI project with this microfinancing and like this future around it, what is your evaluation for yourself? Like, what do you actually need to operate in that kind of a space? And let's kind of compare those operating costs between, you know, major UBI projects.
Yeah, so I'd like for our UBI program to be for non-for-profit, right? It's just basically a poverty alleviation mechanism. The microcredits program is how we kind of create value with these communities and basically make ourselves self-sustaining. And so that's how I would separate the two.
Yeah. So this is where you go and you say, like, yes, we've given you the UBI. Now in the microfinance world that we're like creating.
If you'd like to take a loan,
transaction fees, loans. Yeah. Jessica, what are you most excited for Impact Market?
I think the microcredits definitely is something that I'm the most excited about because we are seeing impact. I mean, with UBI, we saw impact on very long term, so over 2 years. With microcredit, we see immediate impact. We see a lot of women-led businesses flourishing, and I think that's what excites me the most, to see like a really powerful economy flourishing from those communities.
Yeah, specifically, I think some of the data you could provide around this is the pilot that Cello did with the Grameen Foundation, which was specifically during COVID, allowing a bunch of women in the Philippines who were business owners to kind of continue to facilitate their business and keep their family out of poverty during COVID.
We did so many pilots. There was one in the Philippines, like you mentioned, where we delivered stable coin-based payments to mobile phones to 3,500 women in the Philippines. That was funded by JP Morgan. We did a couple pilots with the World Food Program and Mercy Corps on microwork. So basically, teaching people to annotate data.
Yeah, that was in Kenya, right?
Yeah, it was in Kenya. Yeah. So basically, they were annotating data for AI algorithms and earning payment on their mobile phones, which I think is very powerful. I'm really excited about that.
So they were annotating the data that would be feeding these AI models?
Yeah. So
that's early. That's early AI.
Early AI. Now I think the amount of data requires a little bit more sophistication. Yeah. But this was like real AI data that they were using back in the day. This was 3 years ago.
Yeah. Back in the day is 3 years ago. All right. Well, with that, I just want to give you guys a chance to say anything you'd like to say. But this has been super helpful, I think, for a lot of people to understand. And I can't wait to see this video and tag some people from other projects. But the reality is, like, I don't think anybody understands how UBI works. And I think you guys should do a whole circuit where you are literally just explaining, like, this is how UBI works and this is what we've done with $3 million. Here's the reality of the space. I'm super excited to see what you guys have next. So thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.